All right, call it a day. So, anybody get tired after 3 pages or 4 pages?
6.
I read the whole thing, but I didn't do it on one sitting.
Well, at least to the degree anybody wants to give me editorial comments from a spell check perspective, totally open to them. As I think I noted in my email, I wrote it all. I don't think anybody's really read it all until you guys kind of see the whole thing. So obviously through the entire process, I tried to ask as many questions as I could, tried to gain the input from as many people as possible. If through this, if anything you see in there, you think that kind of as the author I've missed the boat, you can tell me now, you can tell me later, however you want best to communicate that. I struggled with when to stop, and I struggled with what to include. So it's from that same perspective, I think I need to go back and again, as the committee finalizes the recommendations, I need to go back and make sure that those recommendations are founded well in the document. So I think there's some kind of buttressing and presentation that can be improved. But in an overall perspective, obviously, I'm trying to get it down on a piece of paper. I guess my concerns seem to be confirmed through a lot of the data that I did. And I started to work more and more on the document from a data perspective. What do the numbers tell us? And I was quite surprised to see how quickly the district has actually grown the number of students. The FTE numbers that were provided to me yesterday or the day before, I believe show us in the neighborhood of 250 students more today in this kind of area in the district. So that's a 4.8% increase from a district-wide perspective. And the good and the bad is it hits at all different levels. So not as though it hits at one facility or one grade level, but it's an amazing year-over-year change. And when you go back and you start to understand, I had good data from the district as far as kind of classroom student counts from year 2000, 2001 to current. So there's a couple different sources we got that from, but we basically build from a position in 2001 to the present where we've grown at a rate of about 1.1% every year. And in the last 2 or 3 years, that rate of growth has kicked up to an average over the last 5 years of about 2.4%. So the overall student totals just continue to stress what we have from a facilities perspective, what we have from a staff perspective, and ultimately I think those are the kinds of numbers that until we pull them together, we don't get to inform our community of what's happening. So as I continue to kind of look at the data and ask those questions and try to compare those and just do some simple visual presentations, our individual buildings and our district as a whole, that was one of the remarkable things that I think I keep coming back to is we're just growing a lot. And as I noted in text, a lot of the changes that we've had, a lot of the student additions that we've had, we haven't added another classroom since essentially 1993 when we added a school. We might have piecemealed something here, divided a space over there, added a portable or two, but from a fundamental perspective, we haven't added square footage to the district. And so as we continue to look at the recommendations and we as a committee consider what kind of timelines might make sense, those are things to consider. I ran it just a little bit earlier, and a new number that I'll incorporate into some of the projections. In order to meet our current growth trends, we have to add 5 classrooms of capacity a year. And so when we look back at where we're growing, sorry, I have too many windows open now. as we look back at these projections and the fact that, again, we're increasing 1.5% a year, we look at student changes where, again, we're going to have 100 new kids show up. And again, 100 new kids showing up in a year, right now, in some cases, we haven't packed our classrooms so full of students that we still have a bit of wiggle, but that's going to continue to go away at a very, very rapid pace. And so as we look at short-term and long-term solutions, the numbers matter. I've had some conversations with people today about the concept of where we're going. I just want to build back to that. The intent of the school board, as I understand it, was to answer a number of questions. First, in the most basic sense of, what do we do today to address elementary student load? How do we address boundaries? Do we move boundaries? Which boundaries should be moved? What do we do? Second question, in a more global perspective, is what we're doing for our facilities now as far as investing dollars in those, are those the right amount of funding? Do we have the right kinds of resources in place to keep up with the condition needs of our buildings? And then three, where are we going? And the where are we going has a lot of combinations of educationally, where are we going? Facility-wise, population-wise, what do we need for those kids? And then grade alignment conversations, where do we want to be? And so the visioning element that I took from item number 3 is help us understand where our district needs to grow in order to support our community, in order to meet our educational needs of our students. As I started to draft the report, as I started to put parts and pieces in place, as we had conversations, discussions, both as a meeting here and then one-on-one, I really came back to the recognition that adjustment of elementary boundaries right now doesn't do anything except cause our community to basically get upset for probably no true benefit. And so as I look at that from an elementary boundary perspective today, I think any boundary that we move around, we have to ask the question, is this going to last for 10 years? And if the answer is no, or probably not, if we don't have a high level of conviction that it's going to work for a while, then I ask the question, why are we picking up families out of one building? Why are we moving them to another building with the potential that they're going to get disrupted again? The reality is, in big school districts, that does happen, and that might happen every year. And we may get to a point where, as a district, we don't have a choice. Our school board doesn't have a choice. Our administration doesn't have a choice. And we simply have to take the best of a series of bad options. But from an overriding goal today, that's the guide that I tried to put out there, and I hope makes sense to you all, is 10-year vision. Is this going to work for some longer term approach?
Ryan, if I can interject for a second. Number one, you guys, I'm going to tell you, Ryan, you are a rock star. You have worked on this, and I appreciate every single thing you're doing. It's been a pleasure to work with you and try to keep you connected into everything. And by the way, I haven't told you, we have an admin team meeting tomorrow. You're invited to that as well. But I know you
Donuts
work.
for dads.
Huh?
It's at 9.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because you're going to be there. That's right. But maybe you can come up here with Heidi when she's done with donuts for you. But anyway, you know, your plan, we're pretty close. I really appreciate, and it's more of a visionary plan. 10 years, it moves us out there. My plan is more of a reactionary plan, and that's what I handed out to everybody. This page right here. Because the board did ask me, and we have a meeting on the 12th. Everybody here is obviously one. We wanted you to know about the meeting at the 12th, 6:30 in the morning at the library at the junior high. and Ryan has stepped up and shared this thing, and he's been a godsend. And I work with the principals and the school folks, and we're kind of connected, but we're not always connected. Doesn't mean anybody's wrong. It's just saying we may be looking through things in a different view. So we put together, what the board asked me to put together was, what do you do right now? And so that's what that is. And I'll tell you, our recommendation as a admin team, we're probably on 1 through 5. But I had to put 6, 7, and 8 down, just so everybody knows what those things would look like and what they would cost. So we are looking at right now, at converting the Apple Valley Heidi's Library into 2 more classrooms. That's turning into a 4-track school, and that's gonna get us another year or 2, okay? Some of View's boiler room is gonna be cleared out. That will open up a double portable, because you can't have music on one side of a portable and a class on the other side. We'll put music in the boiler room. That opens up 2 classrooms. Some of you, believe it or not, is becoming a 4-track school as well. 4-track meaning 4 sections of kinder, 4 sections of first. So anyway, and number 3 is we need to be able to make room at a tandem because, and so what we would do is we would move the special needs preschool to the freshman campus, or the possibility of White Hollow. I'm working with Rick Ferguson as well about what their openings are as well. So but right now, moving out to the freshman campus, then that would open up 3 classrooms that uses at a tandem, and I think we'd have 4 or 5 total classrooms. Because what we would do is we would take this area from a tandem to Washington, the airport to 64th, that currently attends Summit View, which is nuts, frankly, that they're bused over to Summit View. And we've kind of changed our thought on this. It was a good idea the other day. Why not have the kids that exit out onto the Washington side still go to Summit View? Kids that exit out on the tandem side go to a tandem. That wouldn't be an overly dramatic move for a tandem to take those kids. It would alleviate Summit View somewhat the next while. It would still leave room for a tandem to take the kids at 64th in a tandem where the 96 mailboxes are, and maybe some of the single-family housing development across the street, which sounds like a good idea. April was out yesterday today. She hasn't had a chance to give me exactly what those numbers are, but I thought that was a good idea to explore. And number 5, the developments north of Summit View near Apple Valley, we would shoot them out to Mountain View, and that's like 74th to 96th, I think, Ryan, or 70, what was it?
96 is where Cottonwood picks up.
They pick up anyway, so doing that. And then we put down, down the road, we're gonna have to look at adding on to the wing at White Hall that was left open. Ryan, I put 6 classrooms, thinking we'd move, if eventually we're trying to move to a K5, and that'd be 1.8. The tandem add 6 there. And then everybody needs to know that a double portable is $350,000.
Why is it so expensive?
They just are. That's what it costs for zoning, permitting, delivery, setup, and that's for a one that's plumbed and, yeah, a wet portable, which you're kind of hard, it's kind of nuts to not do a wet portable nowadays. And it depends who you put in there, but if you don't put the wet portable in, it limits your flexibility down the road.
Sure.
And then when it's a wet portable, though, it's truly not a portable anymore, for the most part. That's the other thing. You kind of want portables that you could move to the middle school if you need them there, or whatever. But we put this together as an admin team, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to what Ryan has recommended. It's a little more like we need to do this kind of like right now, kind of thinking about it. And it's last spring, the elementary boundary plan was 6 boundaries. It's pretty direct. It was 178 families, 6 boundaries. This is simply 2 boundaries, the north of Summit View for one area, and half of that corridor out there. That's what it is. A little less dramatic.
Well, I would say it's especially less dramatic, not that I agree with it or disagree with it, but on the North Summit View side, because a lot of those homes aren't done yet. So it's not like you're taking families in an existing
Exactly.
place and move. They're families that may assume they're going to Apple Valley if they buy into this place, but would find out, or, would know. So there's a little less dramatic.
But Ryan's plan looks a little more visionary, looks out, looks at some things, talks about the dirty word in the county development. That word, I like the word. We did it where I came from, and I went down Ryan and I talked about that when I argued against the development on White Hollow. I talked about
The impact fees.
the impact fees, and everybody was like, and the lawyer said, well, obviously you came from the coast, because we don't do that over here. And somebody said, well, they did it in Moxie, part of that.
I
What's an impact fee?
You charge taxes, you impart, Ryan does, impart taxes on everything sold to a developer. For every quarter acre lot, you charge $10,000, $20,000.
Some number.
So they pass that on to who? The person buying the house. But what it does is it racks up money. Where I came from was very rural district, central Pierce County, unincorporated, massive growth, and it's massive portable city, more portables than anywhere. And so they had, we tried to do impact fees and it didn't fly. They would, the board wouldn't do it.
Well, it's probably based on, you know, what's the goal of the county or the council or wherever. If the goal is rapid growth, they don't want anything that's gonna hinder that or add to the cost, right?
Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you, Ryan, for giving me a couple minutes.
So, and I went back just in some capacity, and I've added another section to the draft of the report, which is what I called short-term capacity improvements. And I had a meeting on maybe Tuesday with Tim Critchlow and Dr. Brophy, and I basically just went down the list of every building and I said, Tim, what can we do to add capacity to this building? And so that was the question. We went through kind of our current operating list of safety improvements and kind of would-like improvements that Tim keeps as kind of part of his responsibilities. And so we went through that kind of at a district-wide perspective. But as we touched on every building, I asked the question of Sam again, our facilities director. I said, what could we do to add capacity to this building? And so some of the elements that have been previously talked about that were really more specifically identified again by administration at the last board meeting were the concepts of the Summit View Boiler Room. The Apple Valley Library was discussed at that point. So those have been some of the shorter term kind of options. So you'll see this when you get back to it, and I just built a quick table that asks that question, what can we do to add capacity? So again, just more of an informative perspective.
That's not in one.
That's not in the current one, you have to go online and look.
I wrote that down.
Did you resend it or not? Okay.
No, I'll take it back based off kind of comments and conversations and see where we want to go. Now, one of the things that I tried to say in text and that I want to verbalize right now is anything we do to our existing schools to change their use has an offsetting impact. So when we go to Summit View, as we already went to Summit View and we chopped off half the library, there was an impact. And as Eva shared with the board, the impact is there's not a common space there to do a book fair. There's fewer books on the floor for kids to check out. As the district contemplates the same kind of change at Apple Valley, it's going to impact that space by potentially reducing the number of books, by closing down what has been more of a community meeting space. When next the board goes to Apple Valley and has a board meeting, the space that they're able to use just from a physical availability is simply going to be different. So as we look at our buildings, as we contemplate short-term capacity modifications, they have some impact. That impact may be that kids have to walk outside to get to their classroom. Or it may be that we don't have the same library. So those are all challenges that I guess we have to understand, and then ultimately as the school board gets to make their final decisions, things that they need to understand just as parents of the community feel. And again, that's part of the information that we just need to share as well.
Are you wanting to talk about these now, or how do you want to go about this?
I was going to go back to my 5 questions.
Okay.
Does that work?
Works for me.
Okay. As I think, as Dr. Brophy noted, I only considered a few of these for now. I don't, if the facilities committee has conviction that more than what is shown in the report right now should be included, I'm happy to understand that. So. So the 5 questions that I had asked earlier is just kind of this concept of K5. And this is K5 vision, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. It's vision. It doesn't happen tomorrow. We're not making a mid-year change in our school district. It's something that takes significant planning, and frankly, as our facilities currently exist, may not even be possible. But the question becomes, is that the vision that matches what, as a district, we want to have? And so that's the open question. Does a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 model make sense?
I think it does. I don't necessarily think that 6 through 8 is a building, but it's the middle area.
Well, right now, 5 and 6 are at the middle school, and then 7 or 8 are at their own school.
Junior high.
So moving to this model, we're basically saying, I guess if we were to implement this, right? So 6, 7, and 8 would go to the current junior high, correct? Or would they move to the freshman campus?
There is not current capacity at any one building in middle campus, freshman, or any of the elementary schools to take 3 grades. You couldn't make it fit. So if that was the consideration, there's obviously other people that get to be involved in those conversations, but you come up with a 6, 7 concept in one building and a 7 CTE or 8 CTE concept in the other building, or you come up with a dual track North Middle School, South
Sure.
Middle School. You come up, if that's the vision, there's probably some choices you can have there.
Can we currently support moving the freshman campus to here?
No,
Can't do that either.
and that's what we heard yesterday from Ben. He said no.
Ben and Chris and I are gonna get together. We're gonna look at ways we can maybe reduce down some things and where we can get to here, but right now it's a no.
The biggest capacity issue, there's a couple capacity issues in this building. The success of our CTE program has taken square footage. So that's one of the amazing kind of offsets that we've had in the building is CTE needs its own facility. CTE needs physical space that's not inside this building so that Chris can have the big manufacturing equipment that trains those kids. And so,
Better start fundraising.
from a global perspective, those are the offsets, those are the choices we've made. We have, the other big impact in this building is they kind of just didn't build enough office space. And that's probably a bit of transition between where they were when they were designing and considering the school in 2003, 2004, and where we are today. But we have classrooms right now where you have one ELL instructor in a one-on-one kind of training curriculum with one student. And so we presently have a couple classrooms where it's kind of a one-to-one relationship because we don't have offices, smaller spaces that support those. So we have some inefficiencies in the use in our current buildings.
So you're not maximizing the square footage.
We have some, like in a shop class, the amount of sawdust would totally destroy a computer, right?
Sure.
So you have to have that separation between a CAD lab space where you're creating your CNC designs to create your tool paths. Then you have to have access to the tools that can actually make those cuts. And it's not really just us. You're going to say the same thing if you go over to Perry Tech and you go to their machine shop. They're going to have that walled off separation between a CAD space and a CAD lab and where the actual production of machinery is going to be. And the same things like in our ROTC area. We have a West Point partnership marksmanship range where our students are getting the same curriculum as students at West Point, but you can't really have a classroom sitting down range.
It's not an ideal learning environment. But yeah, I mean, what you're describing.
Aren't they little pellets though?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, you're not going to die. It's just
You might have some teachers volunteer for that position, actually.
yeah. So it's
No, I mean, what you're saying though mimics the real world, right? So if I go to a CNC shop somewhere, they're going to have the same exact setup.
yes.
So that makes sense.
But we're gonna take a look at it. We're gonna look at what we
And
have.
that's where I need to walk. We're going to do a walkthrough tomorrow too, and we're going to meet just to kind of see those, how they're set up.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean,
So-
this is an idealized model, right? This is the model that a lot of us had when we were growing up in terms of separation of grades, not necessarily single buildings or, whatnot. I guess my question would be, and obviously I'm on the earlier side of this educational piece rather than the latter, except I went through high school. you know, what, is there any distinct advantage to having a freshman campus?
It depends on who you talk with, and that's unfortunate that the voices aren't here. Because just as we met yesterday, you had some administrators with some great philosophical and research data on why it is valuable, and then others, who don't. So I mean, that's a hard one. I sure wouldn't be the one to make that decision. I think there's reasons for it that are very supportive of people who live in that world and understand freshmen are tiny little fish.
Yeah, see, I ran it for a while. I came from a district, and just at this the last meeting, that had an 8-9 building. And I would definitely say like 8-9 doesn't work because 8th graders don't understand the need to pass classes, and then they pass that culture on to 9th graders, and then you get all these 9th graders that are credit division. You have such of a cultural demand difference that by mixing those two, 8th graders, the way you teach an 8th graders, all right, let's intrinsically get motivated to pass your classes, and let's really kind of learn to grow. And then you have a 9th grader, it's like, man, if you don't pass this math class, it's not going to count off, and you're not going to graduate. I spent 2 years as the building administrator there, and I found anecdotally, but you all know the singular word for data, right? Anecdotes. So, anecdotally, you see that maturity transition, but then the ability to access those programs. But I do see that huge waste of unused space, and like there's a lot of those empty classrooms, and it's like, how do you do that? My mouth waters when Dr. Brophy talks about moving the pre-K students up to the freshman campus, and then we tie our pre-K CT program in there, and then we have direct access.
Child development,
Because we have a child development CT program as well, where students get their CT, child development, early childhood certifications as well, and I'm like, then our kids aren't driving all over the place because the middle's right there.
Well, how far of a walk is it from, if you left the high school and walked to freshman campus? That was
They do it every day.
5-minute walk, right?
Yeah. 8 minutes.
From the furthest back corner of the freshman campus to the furthest back corner of the high school, it is exactly 8 minutes.
So realistically.
On a full go, don't stop.
And I would say that's one of the concerns or driving forces to get the freshmen into the high school, is having that issue of the kids walking back and forth, and they're not walking quick.
So
Do high school students get graded on tardies?
eventually, things can add up. So one of the things,
Not graded.
it's not a grade, it'd be a discipline thing. But one of the things we did where I came from, before I came here, we went to a massive reconfiguration and reboundary, both same year. 22,000 students, okay? So we decided to move to 9 to 12 high schools. We were 10, 12, 7, 8, 9, K6. So we did all the research. The longer, and it was crazy. 9th graders have to be somewhere near the high school, but they don't get it that their credits now count. We were 8, that 7, 8, 9 was pathetic, because the 9th graders are not developmentally age appropriate to be around 7th graders. It's not right. So, but 6, 8 is more, they say, that band, age band, okay? The best configuration, research shows, is K8, but nobody can do it because of facilities, okay? The longer you're connected to kindergarten, the better, because that's how much more time you have to get to know and work with kids, is a longer period of time. So we did the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. The 3 high schools are all over 2,000 kids. The board there's concern was, my God. And so we brought people in from Kent that have 2,500 in their high schools to talk with the board. So that was that's the most popular configuration. We researched everything under the sun. And they did that the year I moved here. That was kind of...
Is that why you moved here?
No, it wasn't, but it was being done. But the thing was, they also reboundaried for 18 elementary schools.
Oh, wow.
Same year, might as well do it all in 1 year.
So what would be the motivation to have the freshmen at the high school?
So I went to a freshman campus in my education, and I didn't think that it was actually a good thing, because for a year we were isolated by ourselves. We didn't have anybody to look up to, and so then we were literally treated like freshmen for our sophomore year too. And so socially, which a lot of high school is developmental, not just knowledge, it's a huge disadvantage from what I experienced going through high school.
More people are moving toward it. I know Snoqualmie Valley, North Bend, they just moved to a freshman campus. This whole thing is, I get what Steven says, the whole thing is to make sure that kids have a year to focus academically. They don't have the drama of 10, 11, and 12th graders. They don't have all the other crap going on, and they can focus, be socially segregated, and focus ideally academically, so that you don't get any Fs, because every time you get an F grade in 9th grade, it exponentially raises the rate that you're going to drop out of high school. So that's the purpose behind it, is to take a year before throwing kids into the high school environment, the 10, 12, and all that goes along with that.
So how did we arrive at this recommendation to have the freshmen at the high school then? What was the reasoning behind that?
Space.
There were a number of reasons, but the next one I would add is space, is figuring out how to best maximize available capacity in our district. Right now, between the freshman campus, which I believe there's 6 spaces or 7 spaces that aren't being used, and here at the high school, I think as much as 7 or 8 is a question of how do you use those spaces, how do you get that capacity, those 15 or so classes, how do you get those otherwise back into the access pool of the district? How can you use those better?
And it's nice to have philosophies, but unfortunately, space drives everything. In fact, people end up, the configuration of one we have now is all based on space.
And back to the last comment, which, so maybe it's 3, and I don't know if I forget something else you guys are. Everything a student, a 9th grader wants to do as an elective, they have to make that 8-minute walk. And so the amount of traffic that we have back and forth just is part of the day that's disrupted.
How is that gonna change if we have CTE over there? You're still gonna have tons of kids walking.
You'd have to have all the CTE here.
Yeah, I don't know that that's.
Everybody would have it here.
And there's really, I think, the bulk of the students you have walking is more of a staffing. The only CTE classes students can access here is woodshop and ROTC. That's it. So our vocational classes, CTE classes are to capacity. It's predominantly now this bubble that we have of a class, so then the high school staff is absorbing that ELA, math classes, science classes, because it's another fiscal responsibility. Do you hire a part-time English teacher to fill another classroom down there, or do you have the students come up?
Yeah.
Because it's really not a lot of the CTE classes. We're to capacity before the 9th graders even get a register in CTE.
And how do you envision that model changing? Is that how it continues, or do you just continue to add CTE opportunities into order to?
That's a full philosophical question that I can get into. I don't target growing 9th grade CTE programs, and the big reason why I don't is a student who wants to attend university is their schedule's filled. They don't have to go for the electives. So when you're talking about a 9th grader in woodshop, I mean, I can bring you to the 9th grade woodshop class, but think about it like a special education. But instead of academic ability, you're talking about motivation. And when students register for classes, they register as 13-year-olds. They're 8th grade, 13 years old, and they're registering. And the students in the 9th grade woodshop class is essentially a 13-year-old who said, I'm never going to go to college. And I want you to kind of picture an entire room full of 13-year-olds who said, I'll never go to college because their schedule's filled. There's a big difference between a 11th or 12th grader who said that I'll never go to college, I'm going to try to prepare for a career. Because an 11th and 12th grader is trying to find a new pathway, and 9th grader is a kid who's given up. So that's the big reason why we really did a target on that rigor and enhanced rigor within our CTE programs, and ensuring that students are getting that academic skill, which has improved the quality of our program. You'll say, Chris, where's your high academic rigor within your woodshop program? And I'll be honest, it's really hard to get it there when you have a bunch of 9th graders who've given up. I would say if we look at most of our students who are going to be dropouts or not make it, most of them are in that 9th grade woodshop class right now.
Is that all of them? I mean, what percentage though? Because how many?
I know,
are
that's why I
just
said
like
I'd love to see that data.
Kids that are like, yeah, I like building stuff. I mean,
But if you like building stuff, if someone told you You might like building stuff, but you'll never go to college if you take this class, because you have to get your foreign language, you have to get your Washington history, you just have all your other college admittance. You'd wait until you got to 11th grade welding or machining. You're still building stuff, but you didn't have to totally shut and slam and lock the door on going directly to university. And those are the kids we have in our 9th grade woodshop.
The interesting challenges as you're looking at, this is your bubble. We just talked about 441 in 9th grade right now, but your bubble right now is a 453 in 6th.
Yeah, it's kind of like, most of the kids coming up for academic classes because you need like a .2 English teacher, a .2 social studies, a .2 science, and they're coming up to get those. So if we found the guy with the ultimate teaching certificate, we could probably hold most of those kids down then. It would just require like a magic teaching cert. But did that answer the question?
Yeah,
It's kind of this weird that thing that a lot we haven't really thought about when you think about taking woodshop in 9th grade.
yeah. Well, and, I look at it also from the standpoint is every kid ready to go to college at 18, or should every kid go to college at 18?
Oh,
That's obviously not the point of our discussion today, so I'm not.
Oh, and I agree with that point. I'm just saying there's a big difference, and that's the conversation I love having with the juniors, because now they're trying to figure out a new pathway. That's the conversation I have with the 11th and 12th graders. Let's figure out a pathway. The 9th graders not, am I figuring out a new pathway, it's, I've given up. Because they're 4 years away from making 5 years away from making such a committed decision.
Yeah. Well, personally, I look at something like this and I say, if it makes sense to create appropriate capacity, this is something we should consider. But only, really, for us, it's more of a capacity issue. The educational and those other developments are important. I don't think they're necessarily what we focus on in the facilities, because most of us aren't educators, so I can't speak to the social development of 9th graders. I remember it being awkward as hell. But, I think that doing what's best in terms of filling the spaces appropriately is where we should have our focus. So, if it can be done appropriately, yes, I think this is a good model. But if it just ends up being overcrammed one school, and now all of a sudden for the sake of getting to this system, we've got one school that's now lopsided and now too much for there, that might not be the best way to go. Does that make sense? Or am I being wishy-washy?
Well, the question simply comes back to, I guess I would break down the question once again, which is this the vision that makes sense? And then from that perspective of yes or no or something else, then the question becomes, okay, how do we reach that vision in 10 years? What are the steps that as a district, and by that I holistically mean what are the responsibilities of the district from a community perspective as far as levy or bond support? What are the needs from that teacher training and administration perspective? And so that's, start with the vision and then break it down into parts and pieces that can make sense.
There's really two ways about going and trying to achieve what we're trying to do here. And one is to create the vision, to work toward, to make as the guiding map to get your facilities to meet that vision. Whereas the other option is to be reactionary and use what facilities you have to dictate what your vision is. And that really, ideally, if properly planned, the vision is going to guide the facilities, not the facilities guiding the vision. And so I think that from a facilities committee standpoint, we need to be determining with the input of the district what the ideal vision would be, and then try and figure out how we can get the facilities to meet that vision. And I think that a K-5, 6, 8, and 9-12 is a far superior system to what we currently have of K-4 with a 5-6 middle. So, if we can all agree on that, that at least gets us going in the direction of saying, what's our vision going to be? Where do we want to go? And then we can start laying out a 10-year plan to get the facilities to match what we want to do.
One other possibility, it seems everyone, 9-12, that's what everyone agrees with, and you certainly want to get the 5th back in elementary, but based on what we have in West Valley, what about just having a 7-8, putting 6 back in elementary, because the junior high will only hold 2, and then I guess the long-term plan would be converting the middle to elementary. I thought the K-6 model was, thought worked pretty well too.
Isn't there already capacity issues at the junior high with just 7-8 already? So,
I mean, again,
But there's capacity
fundamentally,
issues everywhere,
yeah, fundamentally, you have capacity issues everywhere, except for little nooks and crannies, and presently the space that we have at the freshman campus. Those are, you look at, some of these full, Apple Valley's full, White Hollow's full, Cottonwood's full. Mountain View has some space, and Apple Valley has some space / programs you could potentially relocate. Freshman, the middle school, I guess I get a little bit of mixed messages, and I need to just sit down with Russ and ask him directly. You know, I think middle school's running about 860, 870 kids, and that design is probably a, I don't know, maybe an 850 school. So there's some flexibility back to short-term solutions. Who's been in the middle school?
I did the walkthrough on it.
Okay. You know, there's a concept of those kind of center pod areas, whether or not you can break those down into more of some kind of group learning environments and different teaching space to start to maximize those. So they feel like they're almost big enough for a classroom. And, you know, could you go back to some kind of design that will allow you to increase your kind of usable square footage in that way? So just some options there that again, fit a bit of the short-term, long-term choices. So is there somebody in the room who wants to make an argument that this model doesn't work in a vision perspective?
The only question I have is really the same one you raised, which is K-5 or K-6 the better model? And that's from a philosophy standpoint, kind of what we discussed last time. One is more geared toward the politics of classifying 6th graders versus 7th graders and having them in a mixed classroom because it just doesn't work funding-wise. The federal government says we're going to make it difficult if you're going to do that. So does it make sense to have the 6th graders in a 6, 7, 8 because of that? Now the question at that point becomes, do we allow that to dictate what we feel is best for the educational process? I mean, money's important, but sometimes the money isn't the end all be all.
Well, I guess I'm still stuck on knowing that the legislature is going to fund K-3 at 17 and that drastically changes our numbers of teachers at certain grade levels. I would hesitate having a vision that we know is going to be highly impossible with the structure we have and the background of West Valley not passing bonds. Because I think it's great to say, because I would support K-6, but I think it would be great to say K-6 buildings, but that's not going to happen anytime soon with our history of passing bonds and the state funding formula coming down for 17 kids K-3. I mean, that would make many of our schools two-track K-6, and I don't know where we would put all those little bodies at other schools. And so to have a vision that doesn't jive, and I would also like to hear Ben McMurray's thoughts on high school. Whether he feels like the freshman campus is more valuable for those 9th graders, or whether it's detrimental that they're at the high school. I think for me, there's too many unknowns. That 6-8 middle school, are we gonna have 2? If we move the freshmen up and convert the freshman campus into something that could be a huge cost. If you're converting it, if you're putting preschool there, that's a totally different toilet than the freshmen have. I mean, you've got some big costs. So I feel like there's not enough information for me to make an informed decision.
I think we're looking at this for 10 years, a plan for 10 years,
Like a vision.
not for next year or the following year. I understand what you were saying, Heidi, except if we consider the history of bonds and levies, and we think of that as being one of the things, why are we meeting? Because we'll never pass a levy or bond with that idea of what's been in the past. So we have to discount that and go forward. If we're looking at a vision for 10 years, K6 would be nice. I'm not sure that that's a feasible thing. But 6 through 8 is 2 buildings, it's not one, because we don't have numbers no matter what. So, but that's, if we consider that the vision, then we step forward to ways to make it happen. If we continue to talk about ways to make it happen, we don't agree with that, we're really getting nowhere.
Right. And I guess I would like to hear, especially the freshmen, because there are certain benefits to having those guys by themselves, and many districts are going to that. Now, whether the districts are going to that because of space issues like us. From an elementary perspective, it sure is nice not having those 5th graders at the elementaries anymore because of all of the issues that come with 5th grade hormones. I mean, it really makes the elementaries nice little kid schools and not having to deal with 5th and 6th. So I mean, there would be some arguments from elementary teachers that having those 5th and 6th graders with the early hormones in their own space, I don't agree with that. I think the 5th and 6th graders need to have one teacher all day long and have that connection with an important adult in their life. But
I can tell you from my walk in the middle school that the 5th grade wings still had intact bathroom stalls in the boys' bathrooms, but the 6th grades did. So from a hormone standpoint, the 5th graders are still more elementary school than they are middle school. So.
The bathroom test, I like that.
It would, yeah, that's pretty good. I was gonna say, there was some pretty strong feelings at the last meeting, but I think there's only, what, 3 or 4 of us from the last meeting that are here this time. And I'll be honest, I don't feel educated enough when it comes to elementary, so I was gonna say, who remembers? Because I don't remember from the last meeting, because there was a really strong feeling on that K5 philosophy, and now that this room seems so different.
What I recall was that we came to consensus last time that psychologically and emotionally, 5th grade still belongs with the K4. And it's not, 6th grade was kind of this nebulous year where they're not complete junior high ruffians, but they're not middle, so they're elementary anymore.
I think that's what was said, because I was trying to remember, because I remember there was a strong feeling one way, and now that I'm seeing like how much different this room is looking from the last meeting, I was just curious what it was. When I was there, I just wanted to see it.
I think it's,
Go ahead, Lynn.
I think it's good to have the goal, right? I think it's great to have a goal, but, and have a philosophy of what we want to do, but you know what, we're in reality here, man. We haven't passed a bond issue for 11 years, going on 12. Is there a need for one? You're darn right there is. Are we gonna get one passed? Hopefully we'll convince people we need to pass one and it'll pass. But even if we ran a bond, and we ran it in 2019, the year after we run our next levy, that isn't gonna be built till 2021, the new elementary schools. So we're sitting here, and by the way, it's 2017 now. That's 4 years away. That's why we put together what the heck we're gonna do now without a bond this year or next year, and maybe running it in 19, not knowing we're gonna pass it. But I think it's great to have philosophy, but we're in the here and now, which is a struggle, so.
Chris, I didn't feel consensus on K-5 versus K-6.
Okay,
I thought that it could go either way, but if you think about 6, now you're talking about where can we put it, because we don't have enough space.
We can't do the 5, we can't do the 5th.
I know.
K-6
Right.
space-wise
Might
would
as
be
well
easier
go for
because
6.
you turn the middle school into a huge elementary, which is not ideal, but it would still be doable. You could, in theory, do that next year,
yeah.
but by no means would I be under any impression that that would be the ideal learning environment at that middle school with 850 students of elementary school age running around.
And there are things you can do with the teaching model. And the teaching model we're having a pilot this year. We're looking at moving more toward a self-contained model in 5th grade. So even if the school isn't an elementary school, the teaching model dramatically impacts how often kids are out in the hallway, how often kids are doing other things, and gets them more focused on being in class with maybe 2 teachers, maybe 1 teacher eventually down the road. So we're looking at making changes there as well in the teaching model.
Jerry, you've taught under K6 and K5, haven't you? And K4, or did you leave when we hit K4?
I left at the K-4 time. I never saw a problem
Yeah.
with K-6. When the 6th grade went away, I didn't see a problem with 5th grade. Yeah, you've got those hormonal things that you talked about in teachers, but teachers are thinking about themselves instead of the kids and their academic development and maturation and development.
So you didn't notice a big difference between K5 and K6?
No, 5th graders became a little bit, they were now the top dog, but it still wasn't a big deal as long as you treated them the way they'd been treated before. It's when you want to change the way they've been treated, then you get what you asked for.
Is there enough consensus on a K-5 or K-6 strategy?
It sounds to me like K-5. That's my feeling personally. It seems like that.
I think that for me, the determining factor is facility capability. I think that either K-6 or K-5 would be superior to K-4. And so it would just be a matter of which one is more realistic to have the facilities be able to support in a more ideal learning environment. And so, I think that either one would be an acceptable change.
I would agree with that too. It would just be nice to have less movement, not changing every 2 years. So go with K5 or K6 and then have either a 2 or a 3-year middle school.
I mean, if we wanted to push something through and instead of doing these little fixes that we're talking about on this and convert the middle school into an elementary K6, then you could do the complete rebounding because now you've got a new school in the mix and everybody's going to a completely different school and you know what, that's just the way it is. But it would more likely to fit the 10-year model than the kick in the can method that we're talking about now. But nonetheless, I don't think we've got more than just a few more years until we have to have another school in addition to the facility we've already got. There's no way to keep this going more than 5 years out with the growth that we've been having for the last 2 years, 3 years.
I think you have to stretch it to 10 years out.
So is there a priority ranking between K-5 and K-6? And as far as evaluating square footage of schools, usability of schools, my gut instinct is you can't make a middle school conversion work in a K-5 model. And I guessing you can make it work on a K-6 model. But I guess I asked this question not with the expectation that it would be something that was going to happen the next year or two. But something that was a 6, 8, 10-year kind of building. So I just asked a whole bunch of questions. Is there an overriding feeling that a change like this, either a K-5 or a K-6 orientation, needs to be made in the next 3 years?
That's my opinion.
That's it, my opinion too.
I guess we could ask for opposed at this point too.
A what?
And opposed, if anyone's opposed to making this transition, they don't think that it should happen within 3 years.
I have so many unknowns about that though, and just, so what does that mean? Because now you're, because all of a sudden your community of priorities is wow, what are we doing? We still have 2 elementary buildings that are absolutely, not just capacity, but need remodeling or need a new building. So you still have to put that on the bond, hopefully. But then we're gonna have to add on other buildings and build another building. We've tried 2 buildings and they won't pass that. We've tried 3 buildings, they won't pass that. To try to build 2 elementary buildings or a brand new elementary and still take care of 2 buildings. Plus then, how are you gonna make Mountain View a K-6 building? Suddenly I'm looking at what is a building. You're not just asking for 2 new elementary buildings from a community that said no to 2 before. You're now asking for 2 new I'm just worried what you're going to have to build or remodel or change this community. We've gotten that as a priority now instead of taking care of what still is current. So I'm not against it, those that, like Heidi said, those are a lot of unknowns before I would even
Yeah,
have a yay or nay.
I like to think that I have vision as a person, and I like to plan, and we have a great team of people here that have a lot of vision and plan. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm so mired in the here and now, right now. Yeah, Stephen, by God, I'd love to be K-5. Hell, we're gonna be lucky to remain K-4. I've had guys talk about moving 4th and 5th up, 4th and 5th in the middle school, 6th and 7th in the junior high, 8th grade to the freshman campus is the next move that'll happen here if bonds don't pass. And 9-12 here, whether you like it or not, it's gonna be here. And I've heard the next move is moving 4th graders out of the elementary, which isn't, so we can talk about vision all we want. But we got things going that we need to.
I think that the vision is part of what was lacking and why people didn't vote yes on bonds. They didn't understand where the school was at and where we're trying to go, where the district was at. And so I think that that's a big part of the reason why I wanted to get involved here, is to be able to establish a vision so that it felt like we were working towards something.
And you made the trip to Kennewick, and I appreciated that, Steve, and you're part of the solution, not the problem. And you're exactly right. People need to know our vision is K-5. But we need to pass a bond issue, some of you in Apple Valley probably, and say we want to start moving 5th graders back in, and we can probably start there. We may not be able to do it everywhere, but we can start it there. It's better educationally, better for kids, and that's our district-wide vision is K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. We can do that.
You're valid point. That isn't exactly, you're right. It's just that it's too mumbled, right? I mean, like if I'm not even able to see, are you taking middle school now? Are you reconvening or changing it instead of the 2 elementaries? That's the point. Just, it has to be clear though.
And I think the community's gonna have all the same questions we're asking. And they had questions about the bond. What's gonna happen here, what's gonna happen here, what are the schools gonna look like, what's this gonna be? And we couldn't answer those questions, and that bit us in the butt.
Yep.
So if we still have those same questions about, okay, so our vision is K-5, what's the 6, 8 middle campuses gonna look like? We can't even answer that here. And we can't answer some questions about the high school, and so that's all, it's gonna play the same when this goes out to this vision goes out to the community, because this
Once you-
body should have the answers.
No, not if you have a timeline. You
Well,
should be able to figure that.
maybe we're trying to answer questions we shouldn't be answering. Maybe we should focus, okay, if we're here for facilities and vision planning, let's pretend, I mean, not live in a vacuum to a degree, but let's pretend that we're gonna get the funding to get us where we want to go for our vision, right? If we sign this and it doesn't happen, it's not like we go to jail. But, and I feel like if we focus on the funding piece, we're gonna be here forever. We're never gonna get past it, because, you know. It sounds to me like this is a good model for our students. It's a good way to go. Let's make this our vision. If we're on a 10-year plan, let's make this completed by year 10. Let's focus on getting the 5th graders in within, I don't know, three or 4 years. And you just, let's start there and then move back and let the Citizens for a Better School worry about passing the bond. Let's set the vision for them.
Wasn't it the Cheshire Cat and Alice in Wonderland that pointed out that you gotta know where you're trying to go before you can know which way to go? And that's really where I'm sitting right now, is that we need to determine whether we want K-5 or K-6 to be able to then start seriously considering the solutions to be able to make it happen. And yeah, there's some easy ways to look at it and say, okay, I can see how this can work. And I look at the K-5 and say, that one would actually be the most difficult to make work with our current facilities. But it might be, from a vision and education standpoint, the right option. And if it's the right option, I don't think that that should dictate what our, that should still be our vision. And if that's still our vision, that's still what we're working for. And then it's, what are we gonna do to get there? What steps is it gonna require? Do we start by asking for a whole new building and lot? And for an elementary school? Or do we start by asking to rebuild the 2 buildings that are really in the most need of it? You know, where do you start? And that is informed by the vision, and that shouldn't be the other way around. We shouldn't inform our vision from the facilities options that we have now.
Well, I agree with what's been stated, and I think we explain the vision, but we say you're not going to recognize it for many years, because it's going to look like we're going backwards when we have to go to K-3 buildings to get to K-5 buildings.
Well, and hopefully we can get a solution in place before we go to K-3.
I don't think that's possible. Mike, I do have a question.
My fingers down here, so I think you have.
Well, but we don't,
Your number 1 and number 2, is the money there to accomplish
Correct,
that?
we-
That's
yeah,
my
we-
thought.
absolutely.
So that could
We'll
take
do that
place.
ourselves. We'll do
And
that
that
with our
will-
own facilities guys.
And that will improve, not in a real positive way, but it'll improve Apple Valley and Summit View for the whole district, even though Apple Valley and Summit View really know that this isn't the best situation.
Correct.
It's got to be changed, but that gets us a little bit farther down the line.
Yeah, I just won't use improve, I just say change, but
it
yes,
will-
perfect.
it will add
Perfect.
capacity.
But I think that,
Capacity only.
Yeah.
right.
So does Apple
Yes.
Valley then have a small library or?
Yeah, kind of, and I know, yes, we're thinking, so we could take the 2 sides and just have the middle part where our big, you know, Star Trek landing thing is, and, but we have to have hallways, that's gonna be the glitch, is, because as you know, that has to be a walkway based by fire standards, so we have to somehow put 2 hallways in there. But it isn't, and Eva, you know, who did it in her library this fall, was like, don't do it, you have lost every piece. And I agree with that, but I also, we've worked so hard to keep our kids out of a portable. We still have them and use them, but we don't have bathroom capacity to have kids in a portable. I have 1 toilet in the office for kids in the portable to come and use. It doesn't work. And that office is a revolving door, as you know, it doesn't work for us. So if we can put them in the library, at least there's restrooms. They're not there yet, but there's restrooms. So
My,
nothing's ideal, so that's why you pretty well play on words with you.
I think it would
It
be,
changes.
I think people outside of those buildings think it's an improvement, but really it
I
isn't.
mean, and we've talked about, I was
No,
just
okay.
wondering with Heidi, you know, I'm gonna tell you, I believe in the freshman campus. I believe in that, I believe in it, I believe in it. I think it's important, and philosophically I believe in it. However, it's the answer potentially to our issue right now. Because it's sitting there, if you move the ninth graders up, which is, could be a potential circus, you could make that a 6-8 middle school and have the junior high be a 6-8 middle school. That's smaller. You'd have 6-8 and they'd be about 600 kids each, which is a nice size for that age group. And then you take that middle school and make it into a 700 student elementary. And you'd solve your problems for a while. You'd have 600, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders up here, 600 of them in the junior high, where there's 870 right now. So you're gonna push the problem off, you're gonna make this a big time issue here. But that, Ryan, I know you're right, that freshman campus is the elephant in the room. It's sad that we have to think about it, but the fact that we haven't passed bonds has us sitting here now. That's the solution, or possible solution to a scenario that gets us closer to the vision and makes us put off something for a while, but then voters might go, oh, well, see, they went ahead and we hated that freshman campus all along, it was a big waste of money, now they're using it. They'll figure out another way to use things if we vote no next time again. So, I don't know, if that's,
Part of that is getting ahead of that message, right?
yeah.
Which I don't think, we haven't done well in the last 4 years. That point of blame is just, we have not communicated well to the community outside the parents in our district what we need to do. So, anyways,
Question one.
Keep going, Ryan, you're doing great.
So,
Keep on keeping on.
Ryan,
Keep on.
my comment about the freshman campus.
Yeah, I can't think about it right now. I wrote it down.
this is a dry campus, right?
Yeah, try campus.
You can use at your house.
Okay, are there any other ideas to stick on the wall from the freshman campus consideration?
What's that?
I think a big advantage of doing the junior high at the freshman campus at 6-8 is that you don't have to convert anything.
Oh,
Well, to be blunt, I think the conversion issue is a red herring. The fact is, the toilets and sinks in that building are original to 1955. So from a standards and conditions perspective, they need to be replaced anyway. And so it's just, that becomes the kind of maintenance and facility dollar conversation.
But there's also playground facilities that you don't have.
Yes, yes.
figure it
And
out.
so that's
But
other-
on the reverse side, and just to play devil's advocate on that concept is, now you don't have any athletic fields for 6th, 7th, 8th grade students. You don't have any, the only outdoor PE perspective is the practice football field. So you've got great gymnasium space, physically nice big space, double gym, and that works well, but you don't have any baseball fields, because your baseball fields are all downhill. You don't have a football field because it's downhill. And so when you start to look at the ancillary items to that, I think that's where you run into questions.
Fair enough.
Well, you're gonna see next Thursday, there's a shop at the junior high that won't be at the freshman campus. So there will be a different set of haves and have-nots on which junior high you find yourself at.
That's true.
So there is a facility that, there is,
So that would be a justification for inter-district transferring to get to the one that matches the educational needs of the student individually, which isn't ideal, but is workable.
The concept, and Dr. Murphy shared this with me, and I didn't write it down, so I don't remember specifically, but the concept was science at some grade, robotics at some grade. What was that? You said we want every 6th grader to have,
We were talking about coding.
that's what I,
4th or 5th grade coding, then robotics, then pre-engineering, kind of our sequence, yeah.
so can you fill that out? Can you tell me what those milestones are? What's your 4th, 5th, and 6th grade
Coding.
CTE course?
so, well, STEM, because CCO
STEM,
goes on
STEM.
7th grade. We, beginning in 7th grade, well, we're looking at the E3, I can't remember what it's called right now, just the basic Spark, EC3 Spark computing curriculum in the 5 both typing in grade 4, EC Spark in grades 5 and 6, that lead to the introductory block of computer coding in grades 5 and 6. All 7th graders get Microsoft certification right now. West Valley is the Microsoft national partner we train. And then we move into the CCGA, Creative Coding for Games and Apps, Computer Science in grades 8. Now, and Ryan was invited to be there in grades 7 and 8, we have a pre-engineering system where there's the shop at the junior high. Triumph Actuation Systems, Cup Crafters, and Pexco actually have been coming in as businesses and are relaying out the shop on a proposal that gives us a grade. And I'm just coming from a meeting from Central Washington University today that lays out grades 7 through 16 through an engineering degree. So then that way, students will actually have an introduction to that CAD design, CAM system, design process, prototyping, production and design, moving into the Boeing production, assembly, machining, apprenticeship, right into with CHS credit that leads right into Central's engineering degree. So now what happened was, we're talking about only half the students having the 720. And then the concept of saying, well, a 7th grader can decide if they're going to be an engineer or not based upon the junior high they go to. So.
Right.
So that's perfect. That's just the program differences that we start to introduce in the model, and how do you
keep it equal?
That's right. How do you provide it?
And that's, again, now we have an entire early childhood program where our students are driving all over this valley. So when Dr. Brophy says, let's start moving some early childhood to the freshman campus, I love it, because now we can totally limit our high school students from driving all over because they can walk over there. Now we actually have a student parapro. And for some reason, I thought it was an idiom, and it took me for way longer than it ever should have to realize the toilet problem, changing the toilet. It wasn't an idiom, you literally meant changing the toilets.
Those toilets are little.
I know that, we gotta put in smaller toilets. But it definitely would create a system where it culminates that pipeline, because another one of our career pathways we have is we actually have students launch into the early childhood facility. And then we can't talk about it, but Yakima Valley Community College is October 19th will announce their K-8 Bachelor's of Applied Science and K-8 Teaching of Apprenticeship model that we have a feed-in system too. So we also have a grade 9, a 9-16, 16th grade being your last year before your degree, a 9-16 model to get a bachelor's in teaching. So
they're starting that teaching education at freshman or high school.
yeah, they do the exploratory introductory, and then they start earning there. So that's the exploratory, no college credit applied, and then they start earning the college credits 10th through 12th grade. And then our students are actually spending 4 days a week at an early learning facility. So
However, I would argue that most kids that go through the teaching career don't end up in preschool because of the pay. So having them go down to our elementaries is probably more beneficial to their thought process of, do I want to be a teacher? Because they're seeing real life, because you're not going to.
we only are required 40 hours at an early learning facility, so we have the ability to kind of mix. And that's just getting teachers more open to the ideas, because the nice part about totally off topic, but the nice part about the YBC program now is it's 80-90. You go to a bachelor's degree, you've got to take these loaded gen ed programs that have nothing to do with what you're going to major in. So you can actually start off by working in an early learning facility or parapro. And our next program we're trying to launch is a parapro cert, which is what would enable us. But still, you can still do that with the special needs preschools. We could still tie into a parapro cert. They can get that by the time they finish high school and then move in. So I love that idea. I don't know if Mike will be happy that I love that idea that much, but I love that idea.
The what?
The ECE, the early childhood programs going over to the freshman campus.
Freshman campus is the key to this whole
So,
thing.
reach out to anybody. Anybody else can provide comments later on freshman campus. Is everybody comfortable with these decisions? If you're at Tanham Crossing, 64th, you're all going out to Tanham, get north of Summitview.
When?
You got a meeting.
Yeah, I wrote that
That's what I
out.
say.
My recommendation is to make that
Next
decision.
fall. Next
No,
fall.
I mean, you only do yourself a disservice if you delay it at all, because,
We can't delay any of this stuff.
so.
That's why I think it's nice.
Yeah, you just gotta do it next fall.
And I wrote the option up in,
What
back
you're
to
gonna
this,
send us.
the draft you already have, I believe, has this element in it as the recommendation, and it also has the caveat that said, any student who lives in this stretch of Summitview, north of Summitview, their parents can self-elect to go to Mountain View, i.e. we'll pick a lot, but we're not gonna make them go to Mountain View. So if we have an existing student who already has an existing connection with Apple Valley, they're gonna keep doing that, and I would suggest that we hold that true again for future siblings. But after that point, they all would end up without it. This was just a general conversation, and Heidi's gone. She's the one that is currently impacted by this. I just wanted to gauge the general consensus position between cutting up what you have versus adding more portables. You went to a portable school.
I went to a portable school. I've got a son who goes to Apple Valley. I personally don't like the idea of cutting up that library for several reasons. Let's take, the most important one is, I think it's good to have a good library. I know we're all digital. I know everybody likes everything on computers, but I still think there's real value to that immersion for kids. Apart from that, especially in Apple Valley, if it's a snow day or really bad weather, there's no inside areas there except for that library. And I know this from when I did Watch Dogs there last year, and it was snowing, they used the library as a recess area. And, basically you either force them outside when the blizzard is, or you force them in the classroom. So either's not ideal. I would prefer portables, but they're a lot more expensive. So I'm speaking from a facilities member, not a budget member. Okay. Is there any schools that have no libraries right now? They all do. It's just right now, currently, some of you have a small library. It is very small.
I mean, Mountain View has a physically small library, but that's what they've always had, I guess. It's not.
Since it was returned,
Okay.
before that, it was what's there plus the classroom next to it.
Yeah. Computer lab?
No, the computer lab was there too.
Okay.
It took in the computer lab and the next classroom down.
I guess my thoughts on this is that, there's perfectly good logic to say go either way on this question. And I'm completely comfortable with whatever the administrator of the building thinks would be best for their kids in that environment.
The one caveat I would throw in here, and then I will stop talking, is building a portable for a campus that we plan on getting rid of, i.e. Apple Valley, might not make the most sense. Adding a portable to Apple Valley with the understanding of we're going to try to replace that building.
Unless it's truly portable.
Yeah, unless,
It can be
yeah,
moved to the middle school.
So
Yes,
it would
yes.
have to be dry.
you would have
It's
to
gotta
be
be
drilled.
dry portable.
Yeah,
Anything you do with Apple Valley Southern, whether it's intercom systems, anything you do, you want it to be portable.
yeah.
Because you don't have to be,
And
Realistically,
and
there-
yet,
closed over.
just to be the negative Nancy in the room, and yet the negative expectation right now in our district is we're still gonna have Apple Valley in 10 years.
Yeah,
And it's still gonna be there. And if you fundamentally believe you're still gonna have Apple Valley in 10 years, then you put portables on the ground.
Well, then because your cost per year is $35.
I mean, that comes back to the I think I used it already, the gut instinct of when can you effectively expect to replace that building?
Yeah. And at 350, it's wet, but it's not a bathroom, right?
No,
It's an extra.
it's a return.
Little bathroom, okay.
sinking toilet,
And if it's dry, what's the cost,
they're about 50 grand less.
Why don't we buy some of
So
those
it would be 300.
modular homes that they've got down off of the freeway, quality homes?
For the great room instead of like a living room.
Yeah, it's more experiential learning.
It's the meeting specs,
Yeah.
zoning,
Sure, no,
the permitting, yeah.
Bedrooms could be offices.
yeah.
I hate to see the loss of a
That's
library
the log cabin.
simply because reading is something that's important, and it's not just in the classroom. It needs to take place at home, and if you take away the library or significantly reduce it, are we reducing the majority of kids who then lose that desire to read because it isn't there, or what comes in isn't varied enough to bring them in, different genre and so forth. I had a classroom which had thousands and thousands of books. And it functioned, I never had kids go to the library because I had the library in the room. But people don't do that, so it was just me. So I think we need a library. I hate to, and it has nothing to do with supervision during bad weather or smoke or whatever.
I think libraries are very important, and I think I've shared this with others. My children devour books. And initially my wife thought, I'll just keep buying up books until she probably spent a couple $1,000s mainly on books, at which point she began to value White Hollow Library on, Southern Tuesdays and the 80-book checkout limit at the Yakima Library. So,
Yes, I know where I'm going to get my books. Your house.
we apparently at one time, I presume we set a record, we were like on the third card being maxed out with checkout books. I think the limit's like 75 books or something. Fortunately, we've only ever lost one. This element, and Dr. Brophy obviously modified it a little bit today with his current thoughts. And Stephen and I have talked about this outside of this room, is, he's a parent in that neighborhood. I think that the concept again of a tandem versus Washington pickup is new, but ultimately that's the question, is do you do small adjustments like this in order to balance or try to balance it? So that's the question. And if the concept holds of picking up and moving say 3K kids out of a tandem where they currently utilize 3 classrooms, and you now create 3 classrooms, and you can go on a short-term capacity, you can cut the tandem library into 2, probably 2 classrooms. You have the potential to add more students. Yeah.
So my comments on this proposal is simply that distance from the various schools. My neighborhood is closest first to White Hollow, then Summit View, then Cottonwood, then Apple Valley, then Autan, where it's proposed we go, then Mountain View. So distance-wise from my neighborhood, it's the second farthest school away. And so driving past other neighborhoods that are going to schools that are closer to my neighborhood, to get to one that's further away, I mean, that's the issue that I have with that notion. And I think that it's gonna turn people off. They're gonna be like, you're gonna send my kids 4 miles further away from home in order to be able to just affect my neighborhood.
But that's the capacity.
Right.
That's.
And
Rather
so,
not do it, rather not have to do it.
Yeah.
right. And so, but the point that I'm trying to make is simply that if you're gonna, this solution is very much a solution of costing the fewest the most in order to be able to meet the needs of the greatest.
I'm not sure I understand that.
So-
I hear where you're coming from, but what you're suggesting then is to make a whole bunch of changes,
Right.
which,
So I guess the question is, if we're serious about trying to, I mean, if it was seriously on the table of converting the freshman campus into 6-8 and creating a mega K-5 out of the middle campus, that would be something that we could reasonably try and do, if not this year, next year. And so if that's the case, then can we kick the can down the road far enough that we don't have to do this option, and we can do the other options, which is, say, new houses have to go to these locations, and you're gonna pick up the music room out of the boiler room in Summit View. Will that be enough to be able to float one more academic year? And then you redivide everything, because now you've got a new elementary school. And that's the real question that I have is, when you're looking at this option, what's the option that you're looking at implementing the next year or the year after that?
No idea, no clue.
Right, and that's the point.
There's absolutely no
This
clue.
is a one-year solution, it's not a multi-year solution.
I'd love to
And
have
so if you don't
multi-year
have something else
solution.
in mind, this one doesn't meet the test that we, described at the very beginning, which is, we want our solutions to be long-term solutions. And this is, best case scenario, gets us an extra year.
2 years, I think we'll get 2 years out of that. Because moving the boiler room gives us 2 classrooms, that moves it, and they had second grade, then they had third grade. the
Right,
next year.
but this isn't moving the boiler room, that's moving who's going to the school.
No, I know, but it's cutting in half.
Right.
People who go out in Washington go to Summit View, people who go out on a Tatham go to Tatham, so it's kind of a middling, in-between thing.
Okay.
We gotta run right now.
Yep,
Got
okay.
stuff to do. Nice job.
Okay. So as currently drafted, and we're in draft now, because everybody else is, because we lost many people, but the recommendations that I've currently drafted now does not implement any change relative to this neighborhood. The reason I felt to the side of not changing it was principally as it relates to the current development that it is underway. So the Tandem Crossing is the 64th, and a Tandem is a fourplex design. And then a Tandem and Occidental is the 40 single-family homes. And so the potential out of that, if you use the math of 1.1 students per house, that generates 120 or 130 kids. And if we take a neighborhood and we start to fill up a Tandem, my concern is that we get to a point where now we no longer have capacity to take those neighborhoods we previously identified as being redirected prior to existing.
When's building supposed to start on this?
It's underway. 96 has 2 buildings that appear to be everything short of paint, and then 1 building that they're starting to come out of the ground with now, they're pouring concrete last week. So that's 12 units. On the 64th and Occidental, they're doing groundwork, site preparation now.
So by spring?
It's hard to answer that specifically because the developments that are going on along Summit View, so 8805 Summit View is a development where, and then we'd have to look at the number, I believe it's 24 homes. They got all busy and started a year ago and then kind of disappeared for most of the summer and came back and did concrete sidewalks this week, and it looks like they're ready for asphalt. But they haven't broken ground on a single house. The development that's at 80, sorry, I'm getting my numbers messed up. The development that's right next door started later, got done, finished. I think they're working on their first housing foundation, and it's that 12-unit development. So,
And you can expect people to be moved in within 6 months, once they pour the foundation.
yes, but I don't know how to answer the question on how fast will they build those. Right now, they're still in city planning review on the 46 units that go at 74th and Summit View. Those are duplex style. And so,
They're fitting 46 in there?
yeah, 23 buildings, 46 units. 74th and Summit View.
Where they were kept the orchard?
Yeah, a little pear orchard going on. So, I guess I'm more of a status quo, let's leave it alone mindset. And we've identified these new neighborhoods. If those populate kids under some model like that, we have an approach now to get those out of the town and Mountain View. And try to go another year without moving neighborhoods.
And something that I would point out is that the numbers that we were looking at moving to Occanum with the proposal last spring, just the neighborhood at 64th and Occidental and Occanum would move as many kids as what that number 5 would move. So.
Yeah, this estimate is about 80 kids that live in that 64th and Washington. 80 elementary students.
Right. And so realistically, just having this brand new neighborhood that the kids don't have a connection to school yet, say you're going out here, it's the easy approach. And from a bus route, it's really pretty simple as well, because you've already got buses for Tandem going up and down Tandem. If they do a short jaunt up to on 64, you can grab some kids and then keep going.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you're saying right now, if I understood correctly, this is not, and I didn't see it, that's not
This is not,
in the draft.
this is not a recommendation.
Currently. So where are we? We're not, it's not in the current drafts.
It is open for conversation,
Okay.
and I don't want to overly influence what Ryan thinks.
So,
But you can take that I didn't write it into the,
Right. I didn't see it.
into the recommendation.
Yeah.
So, we've talked through these recommendations. I was working on moving up the short-term solutions a little bit higher. These are, if I hit delete right there, that should totally match what's in your paper, what you got yesterday. So, we've already talked about residential units. I've got that engaged developers, trying to get them involved, trying to get more information. I've got B, which is, as discussed, these not yet built neighborhoods have designated facilities, Mountain View and Tandem. I had 2, which is kind of this background of we need to go find more property, because right now the district doesn't own anything that's buildable outside of the property that is at the bus facility. 3, this has already been a suggestion. Heidi Sutton brought this up at a board meeting, and it's something that I believe they're going to try to do district-wide, and it's again, and I guess Dr. Finch is doing some stuff too. He's out engaging pre-K providers. I just learned about that on Twitter today. So they're out trying to understand how many kids are kind of in the pipeline, and so that's just a conversation that they're going to have at meetings, and Stephen is another good example. Hey, Stephen, let's talk about how your student's doing today. Now, how many kids do you have coming behind her?
2.
And so we can start to write that down. And next year when he shows up and now the answer is 3, we can add that to the list also. It's just a joke.
Where is it?
I already added in the one that's in November, so.
So in any case, that's just to start to try to increase our forward-looking capability. I had written this private preschool programming last night. It's again one of the things that I think not necessarily the facilities committee has any role in, but we need to encourage the district to do is just try to go out and continue to identify other students. I had 4 as this open-ended, engage the community to talk about the freshman campus. I have this K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. I put in this 19-20 timeframe. That is obviously open for discussion. You guys have the concept here, but if I don't put a post and a milestone in the ground, you guys don't have something to argue for or against. So consider what that is, and we'll finish that out at some point in the future. I just have a note in there about.
So you're saying 3 years?
This is 17, 18. Next year's 18, 19. So yes, 18 months, 22 months, give or take from today, could that model be implemented? Well, and no is a perfectly fine answer.
No, I don't think it can be. I think we're going to be into K-3 elementary schools at that time.
Gosh, you keep saying that.
But that doesn't mean if we say 2022, that's more realistic that we can move toward that, get there.
So along those lines, and I'm just going to try to build this out, because again, the dates are open. We need to have some conversations. If you commit to some date in the calendar when you're going to change your model and you're going to implement that, that is when you go through the painful, everybody is unhappy rebounding process. So you do have to find either enough reorganized capacity in the district, or you have to add to capacity in the district before you do that. Because the intent is to do that once, for a total for 10 years, and for everybody to be dispersed in the process. I put impact fees because I think it's an element that has to be talked about, and if it's, and frankly, the board has to make a decision. And I can put the word consider in front of that if people prefer. Consider establishment of. So,
What did you put?
I just said establish impact fees.
Yeah, I think consider would be better.
I don't think we need to be soft with this, though. I mean, realistically,
They should.
if we can't get the money from impact fees, we can't support the growth that's gonna be coming. And so, it might slow down growth a little bit.
And honestly, I guess I'd ask the question, is that bad?
Right.
If you had a school district today that always maintained 5,000 students moving forward, would that fundamentally be bad? I don't think you
It'd make
want
our
to be.
job easier.
Yeah, I don't think you want to be in a district that's declining, because that creates all kinds of different challenges. So I think but I just mean that from if you could grow at a rate or be status quo for a lot of years, would that be bad? I think the challenges like we've seen with the 4.8% year-over-year increase, that's when you have troubles, because you can't go to a group of voters, probably even in the most successful schools, you can't go and say, I need another bond, I need another bond, I need another bond. So the growth is a challenge, and the only way to offset that bond process is to utilize impact fees.
We had growth this year, and we're gonna see growth for the next year and maybe the following. But then it's gonna come to basically a halt or close to it, because basically all of the available space for building is being taken,
Clean up the sewer.
and it's not going to, it's gonna take a long time before it extends out farther, I believe.
And I understand that the challenge to that is right now, if everything that we only know about got built, that's 1,300 more living units.
Right.
And at 1.1, that's 1,500 more students. So I agree, at some point, the capacity starts to get used up, but that is a time also in which a developer simply says, I'm willing to spend a little bit more because I know I can sell the next group of lots for a little bit more. And so I think that's when the developer creativity is going to come into play. There's a lot of property down in, the 64th neighborhood that I think is there to be acquired.
Just north of Washington, south of Knott Hill, between 64th and 48th, that whole area, when that develops, which is going to. That's an entire elementary school, just that development alone.
So I agree. I don't think you get to the point of passing fast enough, and I don't think you have, your current model doesn't support it by any means.
So go ahead and keep the established instead of consider.
It's up for debate if y'all.
I'm a blunt person, so
Yeah,
I say go for it.
I'd
but-
leave it the way it is. I like it.
Okay. Is the year, do you want to change the year, or do you want to make it as soon as possible, if you want to make it 2025? Right now it says 2020. It's 3 years.
I'd leave it the way it is.
I think
I don't think
that-
it's realistic.
My only really concern of that is that it may actually push up people building, if they want to get in before the impact fees.
You won't tell me, no, honest.
Yeah. Hey, I got 2 buildings in my neighborhood, very cheap, I'm not sure.
No, I think that's true.
So that's another thing to consider. I mean, how hard is it to get impact fees established?
I think it's pretty hard, and once anything is in the pipeline, you don't have access to that.
They get grandfathered.
Sure.
So if, just again, back to that 1,300 unit number, if prior to that we had $1,000 impact fee per lot, you'd have 1.3 million